Welcome to Waffles and Unicorns, a Belgian's quest for entrepreneurial magic. I am your host, Ryan Dolma, and I will join you on this journey where we figure out what makes startup ecosystems great. We do this by talking with founders from different ecosystems changing the world right now. In this series, we figure out what the startups do, what makes them great, and why the ecosystem choice matters. Today, we will be interviewing Parnian, the founder of Olfera. The company has successfully recreated the human sense of smell on a chip. Join me to learn what that has to do with regenerating brain cells, delivering drugs, and even finding bombs. Besides seeing what the company does, Parnian gives us a peek behind the curtain of starting a revolutionary biotech company and walks us through the Silicon Valley biotech funding process. I hope you like hearing the interview as much as I like doing it. Let's jump into it. We're sitting here to talk about Olfera. Could you maybe give an explanation of what it is? Because I feel like it's a lot of things for me, but you'll be the best at explaining it.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's very fun in this beautiful evening having this conversation with you. Olfera is an early stage biotech startup in San Francisco, and the name is a combination of olfactory system and era. It's a new era where the potentials of the olfactory pathway can be harnessed for the treatment of diseases, disease detection, and people's safety and security. And olfactory system is actually the smell system. It's the scientific word for your sense of smell. And it's a very long pathway that starts from your nose and then extends all the way to the deep regions of the brain that are associated with memory, emotions, and brain function.
And if you had to explain to a toddler or a fairly well-educated toddler what exactly you're doing right now and what the goal is with Olfera, how would you do that?
Great question. I would start asking the toddler what their favorite smell is. Can you tell me what's your favorite, like 3 favorite smells?
3 favorite smells: freshly mowed grass, flowers, and I'm Belgian, so chocolate.
Great choices. So your sense of a smell is what connects you to the world to enjoy the food and get connected with people. And that's what you know it, right? You know about it. But it has many other characteristics that you might not know about it. For example, your nose is the direct door to your brain, which brings the potential of delivering the drugs to the brain directly without going through the longer route. And I'm still talking to the toddler. And then the other fantastic characteristic that your sense of smell has, that it can repair itself. So when there is a wound or damage to your sense of smell, it has the capacity to recreate the cells or the components that detect the smell and send the signals to the brain, which is very unique compared to the rest of the brain. So we're tapping into these capacities of the olfactory pathway for brain regeneration, for repair of the brain tissues that are damaged due to a disease or a head trauma. And we're also using that as being the direct gateway to the brain for effective drug delivery.
Olfera is a company that is essentially using the special aspect of smell to regenerate the brain and also to supply different types of drugs through the blood-brain barrier. I feel as it is now, that kind of seems like a big jump, right? Like these 2 very big applications through sense of smell, which in my head doesn't seem directly related, even though, of course, it is, as you just explained. Was it always evident that this was going to be the jump you're making, or was this something you stumbled upon during another process? How'd you get there?
Great question. Actually, we started the company with a different vision. Back then, I was a scientific consultant with pharma, a great job, but it was boring. And I was exploring ideas to start a company. So I had different ideas that I was testing. And then I lost my sense of smell for a few weeks during COVID, and I regained it. But during that process, I thought that life would be really difficult without having the sense of smell to enjoy the world around you. And then once I regained it, I started learning about it, that, the olfactory system can regenerate its neurons, whereas anywhere else in the central nervous system, once the neurons are dead, they are dead. There is no regeneration, there is no repair. And then back then, my idea was to start a company to repair the sense of smell when it's lost due to COVID or other causes. So I reached out to this professor at Stanford, Dr. Zara Patel, who is a renowned ENT doctor and professor in research on humans' olfactory system. And she was very supportive. She said, let's do something. We don't know what COVID is going to do. A very different variant might come up, and then we might lose our sense of smell for good. So we started the company with this vision. But then, and then very soon we recruited two brilliant people, one neuroscientist who started building a model of the olfactory system for us. We call it OCHIP, olfactory brain on chip system. And then a medicinal chemist that started designing drugs for us, a very seasoned expert in the field. But then as we were exploring the potentials of the olfactory pathway, we realized that there are these other incredible potentials, including drug delivery for the brain, which is a big issue in pharma right now, especially with new inventions for the treatment of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. There are drugs that would otherwise cure these diseases, but cannot cross the blood-brain barrier when they are injected or taken as a pill. And blood-brain barrier is a thick layer of cells that protects the brain against these external substances, and it's a hurdle for the delivery of the drugs. Whereas the olfactory pathway can be used as a backdoor or a direct gateway to the brain. So it was at that point that we decided to focus mostly on this application for now. However, the system that we have built, OCHIP, is a smell sensing live pathway. And the potentials of the system is not just for drug discovery and drug delivery to the brain as a research tool, but it can sense smells such as explosives. So one of the applications that people reach out to us and ask a lot about is, can it detect explosives at the airports, at big events, and help with creating a safer world, basically, which the answer is yes, but we're currently focused on mainly on the pharmaceutical aspects.
Okay. I feel like there's a lot to unpack here. First, starting with the end, and then quickly jumping back to the beginning. So you have essentially three applications that you have in front of you here, and you're focusing on what you say are pharma applications, but what does that mean then?
So the pharma application that we're focused on right now is to optimize the drugs that can cure brain diseases for delivery to the brain through the nose. So we're going to transform the drugs to olfactory prodrugs. This is what we call them. These are the drugs that can be recognized by humans' olfactory epithelium and can be delivered to the brain. And if I wanted to use an analogy or a good example, this is the pathway that COVID virus uses to get into the brain. It binds to a receptor at our olfactory pathway, the epithelium that senses the smell, and then it internalizes itself to the cells and gets released into the brain. Pesticides are also known to use this pathway, and now we want to use it for the delivery of therapeutics.
So essentially, your nose and sense of smell is like a backdoor into your brain that doesn't have as much security.
Exactly. Yes, it's very vulnerable. It's open to the external world. And for that reason, there is a very rich stem cell layer that regenerates these neurons because they die. They get damaged every day by the things that we inhale and reach to the olfactory epithelium.
Okay, how interesting. So to oversimplify, essentially you started off with, hey, losing your sense of smell is awful because you don't enjoy life as much. Then got to the process of, hey, how could we actually restore this? In the process of that, you had to mimic the sense of smell and how it actually acts and functions. And during this process, you stumbled upon the fact of, hey, in creating this mimicking, we figured out it's not that difficult to deliver drugs through this. And now the same mimicking that you used to actually artificially smell things, you can also use to test drug delivery, which is quite the thing. Are you the first group of people to discover that it works like that? Or is it something that kind of has been latent or the technology wasn't there yet? Why are you the first ones doing this?
Yeah, great questions. The interest in nose-to-brain drug delivery has been out there for a long time. And there are actually a few FDA-approved drugs that are being nasally sprayed to the brain. And the most famous example is Narcan, which is naloxone for opioid overdose. So when someone ODs, instead of finding a vein and injecting naloxone to them, now they regularly routinely use it as a nasal spray. And there are other drugs. There's a drug for seizure. There's a drug for migraine attacks. And the reason to create these drugs as a nasal spray has been the fast onset of action, because nose to brain is a very short pathway. And these are small molecules that when they are sprayed, they get into the vasculature of the nose, and then there is a very short pathway from that vasculature to blood-brain barrier and then to the brain. But these are the molecules that can cross blood-brain barrier. They have no issue. The goal has been to make it a fast response in a migraine attack or opioid overdose. Whereas what we're doing is that we are harnessing not the nasal vasculature or blood vessels, but we are using olfactory epithelium, which has the neurons. It's a neuroepithelium. And this part of the nose has some significant differences between rodents and humans. So rodents are the common animals to do drug discovery, but they are not good for testing olfactory epithelium because that's different. So what has been missing has been a good tool that mimics the human's olfactory epithelium or olfactory pathway and can be used for drug discovery, screening, and that is the gap that we are filling. So by creating OChip, we are mimicking humans' nose-to-brain pathway, and we are very excited because we're collecting humans' olfactory neurons directly from living subjects or living humans and patients, and growing them, culturing them in vitro or on our OChip on a petri dish for months.
And should I imagine like a doctor with a scalpel standing there cutting somebody open to get pieces of their sense of smell, or like how does the gathering happen?
That's what Dr. Zara Patel does regularly. So they use a method called endoscopy-guided brushing, and that's basically using a camera where a tubing goes to the olfactory epithelium, guided by the camera, and then they brush a little bit of olfactory epithelium, and then we culture it on our OChip. And it leads us not only to mimicking like generally humans' nose-to-brain pathway, but it can give us information specifically about that subject. So it's personalized drug discovery, personalized drug delivery, all these potentials that this approach introduces.
How interesting. And then also to get a bit better context of your story, what is the timeline here? Like you mentioned in the beginning, you were looking to start a startup for a while already. Then COVID hit and you lost your sense of smell. And then you started looking for, hey, who can guide me further in this process? And then you started looking for people to join you on the team. And then you pivoted quite interestingly and are now working through that. What are the timeframes in between this?
Yeah, so I remember the time that I got COVID and I lost my sense of smell was around New Year 2022. And I started the company February 2022. We just pitched this idea to OnDeck Accelerator and they loved it. So we said, we want to cure loss of smell. And they were like, yeah, come to our accelerator. So that was good. We got a little bit of funding from that accelerator and then assembled the team. And then a very interesting experience, a very useful experience was going through NSF, National Science Foundation, customer discovery cohort. So we went out there and interviewed with multiple experts in the field, clinicians, pharma people, insurance people. And then that was through that process that we realized that drug discovery or drug delivery application for our technology has a very clear path to FDA approval and also insurance reimbursement for the patients. And we decided to focus on, at being a small company, we decided to focus on something that has been de-risked compared to smell loss treatment or drug discovery for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, which is going to be our goal after this step. So we started by something smaller, more clear pathway to begin with.
You mentioned here as well, like a lot of things about funding and being able to gain revenue quickly. I, of course, come in here with a bit more of a European background. And I also interviewed Frederick Seisens, who, of course, has his own startup within the medical field. What I noticed within Europe is that I feel like a lot of these biotech and essentially pharma-related topics are often supported by universities heavily, as in almost grown within the university until they're ready to be something and then put out on the market. But it sounds like you went more of the classical tech route with funding and incubators and then now looking to grow it like that. Is that because you feel like there's an advantage in that, or because the ecosystem around here is just better for it somehow?
In the US, there's also spin-offs from university, and they're very common actually, especially for the biotech. But our idea initiated outside of university, and that is an advantage because we own the whole IP. We own the IP for our OChip technology and for the chemistry, for the chemical approach that we're using. And what is wonderful about the Bay Area is that this model is known and supported. Like I mentioned, when we started with this accelerator, we didn't have any product. We were just like two people, myself and Dr. Patel, just an idea. We were just passionate. There was this big need and we had an expert. And then my background is also in drug discovery research. They put trust in us, which is, I think, fantastic. I think based on what I'm hearing from you, in Europe, it's not common. But here, if you have a good vision, it gives you can find the potential, the opportunity to make a team around it and build a company around it. I wouldn't say that it was easier. It's just how the company was shaped because the idea was created outside of university.
Do you feel like in other places that would also be possible?
What do you mean other places?
Like outside of the Bay Area or out...
Ooh, Boston? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Boston is the hub for biotech. I don't have detailed information about Boston, but I think it would be similar to
Yeah.
the Bay Area.
And then in regards with, if we take the comparison of like university spin out versus creating it yourself and bootstrapping it, of course you own the IP and your cap table must be much cleaner. But I assume you also lose out on the facilities that a university would offer, and also the coffee room or lunch break chats you can have with the local experts and the network you have there. How do you first make up for the facilities that you lose out on? And secondly, do you feel like everybody is as open to talk to you as you would have been if you would still be within the university? Or do you feel like there's some friction there or some more distance?
Yeah, I don't know if you're asking that question because you visited MBC Biolabs, or is it that?
No, it's actually a genuine question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're very lucky that we are part of this incubator called MBC Biolabs, and we have been sponsored by a pharmaceutical company called AbbVie. We haven't been paying rents actually for the lab space in that incubator since last year, which is fantastic. But an incubator, biotech incubator, is composed of many startups, smaller startups like us, working on pretty much everything in the biotech, drug discovery, drug development, tech bio. And it's such an amazing collaborative environment to discuss ideas, to get help. And we have been taking advantage of that. And most of us are coming from academic backgrounds, so we still have ties with academia that we discuss our ideas with. We also have scientific advisors. So we have never felt that being in academia would have that advantage. Mm-hmm. And there is this tech transfer hurdle or step basically from university. Once you start from university, the only advantage would be that when you start something in university, you get your research published. So scientifically, it's out there. It's already proven to the world that the science works. So that's the only advantage, I would say. But other than that, universities are open to share their facilities. For example, we regularly use the clean room at Berkeley, and they have opened it up to startups. So we pay like a minimum amount monthly, but we have access to their facility for the clean room to make the O-chips, which is very nice.
Wow, how collaborative.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's actually super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, like that you don't miss out on anything. We
don't miss on anything, no. Especially being in this ecosystem where we're close to UCSF facilities, UC Berkeley, Stanford, where our chief medical advisor, Dr. Patel, collects the samples from humans, like everything. Like we're at the best location to collaborate with academia as well.
Would you say all of these universities are as collaborative? Or is it mainly Berkeley that is like helpful here?
The three that I mentioned, at least to my knowledge, they are super collaborative. They have well integrated with the startup ecosystem here. And I think other universities are also collaborative, like UC Davis, for instance, I've heard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then besides this side tangent, jumping back to your story, how did you, first of all, how were you able to talk to the initial professor to get the story started? And then how were you able to convince all these other top-tier talents to jump into the boat with you? Because in the beginning, you're just selling a dream, essentially, right? Because on your own, you can't start this biotech journey.
Yeah.
So what did that look like?
Yeah, I think I have been very lucky because when I reached out to Dr. Patel, it was actually, I remember my first message was a cold outreach LinkedIn message. And a busy person such as Zara might not even check their LinkedIn, but she does. And she's very vocal about olfactory research, finding drugs for olfactory problems, or harnessing olfactory pathway for better therapeutics. So my question to her was that I have lost my sense of smell. I did a bit of research. There's no FDA-approved drugs available. Are you doing any research that I can volunteer and regain my sense of smell? We met at Coupa Cafe, like for 1 hour. We had a coffee, and then Zara is amazing. Like her energy is fantastic. She's incredibly passionate. And then we talked, and then she said there's no FDA-approved drugs. There are these clinical research that people are doing, but it has been super understudied and underutilized, this olfactory system, olfactory pathway. And that's how it got us started. She was passionate. I was passionate too. I had a personal reason and I was looking for an idea to start a company. So it just like everything synergistically worked together. And then
Maybe to quickly jump into this. So essentially send out an email or a message even to check if, hey, is there a solution to this problem I'm having? And then you guys grab the coffee for her to essentially say no.
Oh no, we exchanged a few messages and yeah, and I asked, would you have time for a coffee to discuss this further? And it was mostly scientific curiosity. And then I told her that I'm exploring ideas to start a company, and she said, you should, and I will support you. And that was amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Our team is actually bigger than 4, but like these 3 people that are working with me are contributing significantly. So besides Zara, we have Renaud, our chief technology officer. And I got introduced to Renaud through Buddha that you have interviewed before. So they used to work at a different company together called Koniku. And then Buddha and I were in this fellowship called, the ONDEC that I mentioned, the fellowship, the accelerator. And we were in the same mastermind group. And then in the mastermind group, I talked about my idea that I'm starting a company on finding therapeutics that would work through the olfactory pathway. And then he said, you should talk to this brilliant neuroscientist at Koniku who is also looking for something new. So that's how I got introduced to Renaud, who has built our O-chip for us now, a big breakthrough. And then through one of my former colleagues, she realized that I was starting a company on neurological disorders, and she said that, I have a friend who has personal family reasons to join your company or to help you actually as an advisor to start with. And then we talked to our medicinal chemist, Kelvin, and we are super honored to have him. He has more than 30 years of experience as a lead scientist, VP, and executive at Pfizer. And he has a few FDA-approved drugs that patients are using now for pulmonary diseases and other diseases. A brilliant medicinal chemist in drug design and drug discovery. So that's how our core team was built.
How did you convince him?
I didn't have to convince him. He was interested. He's still working at a company which develops antibiotics drugs, and he was interested in venturing into neurological drug space like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So when I talked about like this idea and what we're doing, he found it fascinating, especially intellectually. Now he's designing drugs that no one else has designed before. Like olfactory for a drug is a very novel concept that he's designing for us. I don't know, we should ask him like what convinced him, but
And did you reach out to him?
No, my former colleague actually connected me to him because my former colleague used to be at Pfizer too. So Kathy used to work with Kelvin. And then when she realized that I was starting a company, I was looking for advisors, she introduced me to Kelvin, and then it worked from there.
I guess so interesting, just the connectivity of it all.
Yeah, but we have more people. We have Brian, who is a brain drug delivery expert. He's at Johnson now. We have Sandeepa, we have Sean, we have several other people that are working with us part-time and adding a lot of value.
And on the journey because now you've been going for 2 years?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. How long out do you think it's going to be, let's say everything goes successfully, until there's actually something on the market?
Drug discovery is a long pathway for a good reason, because you're dealing with humans. So you need to make sure that all the preclinical tests are done in animal models and then proper clinical trials so that when actual patients start taking it, there is no risk of toxicity, accidentally killing a patient. And also after this much investment and effort, there is a drug that actually works. So we're talking about a journey that could take up to 10 to 15 years. But being a drug discovery company, we anticipate that we're not going to do all of that ourselves. Usually biotech startups do mostly the R&D parts, which what we are doing right now. And then the rest of the process, which is clinical trials, FDA approvals, is usually in collaboration with bigger pharma. And it's faster when bigger pharma does that. There are different routes for us. I don't want to get into the details, but our approach allows us to go through also some accelerated FDA approval process. For example, if we have a gene therapy or rare disease indication, FDA accelerates the approval for rare disease indications. But in general, we're talking about a few years until a drug is introduced to the market.
And I feel like because usually with software startups, which I'm more familiar with, you can see it grow. But the concept is like you hire more people as you get bigger demand from your audience, essentially. Or people start demanding more from your product, but you're not selling already. With biotech, it's a bit more in a clean room or something, so to say, the company. Do you expect it to grow a lot more as you get further down this path? Or do you feel like you're just developing a lean and mean team or something that you then build out with? How does that work?
You mean growing the company, the number of the people?
Yeah,
or
growing the number of employees.
Currently, we are very lean.
Mm-hmm.
We're wearing many hats, and we want to be lean for a long time, as long as we can, without burning out ourselves. But definitely the team will grow because we need more people to do on different projects. Like currently we're working on all the projects, but we have all these amazing potentials, especially in collaboration with pharma. And then once these collaborations kick in, we need more people to be full-time working on each of these projects. So definitely there's going to be growth, but we want to keep this lean mindset as well, not overgrowing, not hiring people if we don't really need them, basically.
Mm-hmm. And given that the team is often on the cost side of the balance, and again, revenues are a bit out and you don't have a big institution supporting you like a university, are you currently funding yourself through incubators and small rounds like that? Or what does this journey look like for you?
Yeah, we're still a pre-seed company and we have raised through accelerators and family office investors. And we have just started raising another pre-seed round. That's the way that it works. And then after this pre-seed round, getting the data that we want to show to the pharma potential partners, then we will go to the VC round. So having a pharma partnership will definitely change everything for us. And that's what we are doing. We're working towards to get a pharma partnership and then doing a really good VC institutional raise. Currently, we're just doing pre-seed to get to that step.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then the final question before I have to check if there's some things you want to highlight as well. Given that you're stumbled upon this way, if not really stumbled, but found this way of administering drugs in a different way, but also rehabilitating almost somebody's sense of smell to probably other applications you'll find, even like the bomb detection application. As you probably continue to find new applications or come up with this, at a certain point, it must be more than the company is able to research. But if you do it all like one after the other, do you feel like you'll try to spin some of these out or try to maybe license the idea out? Or are these just ideas that you feel like, okay, they're out there, maybe somebody else can do it and while I focus on this? How do you...
Yeah, great question. We have thought about this, and the more information we have, the better decision we can make. I think it is too early to say which idea we want to drop and which idea we still want to keep working on. What we are sure is that our approach has many potentials and many applications, which is a nice problem to have. But we're trying to educate ourselves and collect as much information as we can to make an informed decision about whether we want to out-license an idea or a technology or whether we want to keep it internally. So currently, we're keeping our technology for internal use, and that differentiates us significantly from any other company that is doing drug delivery research or drug discovery. One of the ideas that we are very interested in is learning from the regenerative power of the olfactory epithelium for the treatment of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's when there is cell death or trauma and stroke. This is an example of a project that we don't want to invest a lot of time on yet because it's a huge project and we want to increase our understanding about the market, the need, the future exit opportunities, and then get it started on. But drug delivery is something that we're currently focused on.
Okay, interesting. So essentially, rather than a company being one solution, you're really building almost an R&D lab.
Not necessarily. These other ideas that I'm talking about are the ones that we are exploring, and we think that it's good that we have these potentials to explore. And then in the future, we would have the opportunity to decide about the business model, whether we want to start a lab on one of these, like a spin-off lab on one of these ideas, or whether it would be one of our internal programs. But as a startup company, currently we are focused on the drug delivery aspect because we have so much time and so many resources. So we are spending all of our focus and time on the drug delivery application, but that doesn't prevent us from thinking and learning and talking to people about these other potentials, explosive detection, disease detection, brain regeneration, and other ideas. We haven't decided about the future business models or what we want to do with them, but we are excited about the future potentials.
Yeah, and I can imagine within your team there's lots of excitement. Do you notice when you go to conferences or when you're just chatting with other researchers that they're also really getting excited about it?
Oh yeah, we get a lot of, as a early stage company, we have already been into several discussions with pharma, which is not easy. Like getting into the first meeting even with pharma is not easy. It's very competitive, but we are there. So there is interest. This is something that people relate to from different aspects. Like sense of smell is something that everyone relates to. Brain diseases, like anyone has someone in their family who has a neurodegenerative disease or a neurological disorder. So people resonate with what we're doing, and we always get this excitement from people that we talk to, which is very nice. It's a tough journey. It's a big risk, big reward game, and a very tough journey. But seeing excitement in people and knowing that this is going to cure diseases for people is something that keeps us going every day.
Yeah, if the applications that you gave or discussed would come through it, each one of them would cause a massive shift.
Yeah.
So yeah, it must be very energizing.
Yeah, it is.
Are there any things you want to highlight or like any future visions that you feel like are cool and should be mentioned for people to chew on?
Yeah, I think I mentioned the applications. I think we're getting into an era that the olfactory system is gonna be used for its potentials. And we're not the only people doing it. There are companies that are using the olfactory pathway in other ways. And we think that with the new advancements in science, we are getting into a new period of time where these potentials can be harnessed.
In other ways, how do you mean that? Because the one thing I could imagine is like the air up bottle that gives you like flavor through smell, but I imagine you're thinking about
Right.
things in slightly more
Yeah,
advanced.
so the facts that I told you about olfactory system, I found them mind-blowing. But the more we learn about it, the more and more mind-blowing it becomes. So there's this company called Olfera. It's another startup in the Bay Area. And what they are doing is that they are using olfactory receptors in other parts of the body. So the olfactory receptors aren't just in the olfactory epithelium for the sense of smell. They are found in the lungs and the kidney, in heart. No one knows what they do, but they are associated with some diseases. And this company is using one of these olfactory targets in the lungs to treat pulmonary diseases, lung diseases, which is fantastic.
That's crazy. So
Yeah.
our heart and lungs are smelling, essentially?
I like that phrase. We don't know if they smell because they don't send the signal to the brain, and the smelling is a brain thing. So your brain receives the signals from the olfactory receptor and you perceive this as smell. But they have olfactory receptors. Maybe they smell something in a different way, like a different way than like central brain system, but they are definitely involved in a signaling pathway that regulates the homeostasis or the right function of the tissues.
So it could be something similar, like essentially how the olfactory system in the nose is a shortcut to the brain. It could be something of like just a really quick feedback loop within the heart. Oh, that's so interesting. It must be so interesting to be positioned as well. I remember the CEO of NVIDIA was mentioning that NVIDIA was always well positioned not because they were ready to catch innovation like an apple falling, but because he said, yeah, we just made sure we stood under the tree, and then when something happens, you can jump on it. But it sounds like you're, well, amazingly positioned for the research you're doing yourself now, but also for what's being found by other people as well to jump on and take advantage of.
Yep.
Yeah, you're very lucky that you have COVID.
Yeah, exactly. COVID was not good. Many people died,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but it had some good lessons too and led to some innovations. So yeah, can't complain about that.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. And are there other things that you're really excited about today, besides your company, of course, with things that you're reading about or other people researching things?
Yeah, I think we're at the middle of the AI revolution, and similar to anyone else, we're closely monitoring it and are excited about it. We use AI in our process. We're not an AI product company, but it's facilitating. It actually helps us come up with the right design for our O-chip. The generative AI was something that really accelerated the design of our O-chip microfluidics channels.
Does that mean that you essentially generated a lot of options and digitally tested which one of them would work? Or how
Exactly. So the microfluidics channels basically guide the neurons, the two populations of neurons in just one direction. So let's say from left to right. And this is the physiology that happens in the nose. So the neurons, the
So
brain cells.
when they're growing on the chip, you mean?
Yes. So in your nose, the neurons only move from the nose to the brain. So there is a passage in the cribriform plate where the brain cells can go through, but they don't. And so the biology prevents that. The biology keeps the communication one way, just from the nose to the brain. But recreating this physiology on a Petri dish would be impossible. Once you throw two population of cells, they start growing in all directions, not one direction. Whereas we were able to mimic this by using microfluidic channels, where within these tiny channels there are guides, there are micro hurdles which have a specific shape that guide the neurons only in one direction and prevent them from moving from the opposite direction. And coming to that shape of the micro hurdle, which is our proprietary innovation, was through generative design, because we started with a random shape and every time mutated the shape and simulated the directionality of the neurons. And every time we got a score, that got better and better until we got to the best shape of the hurdles.
Oh, so cool. So you use reinforcement learning to train a model to make the optimal. Oh, that's so interesting. And it's like funnels then or something, I assume.
Exactly.
Where it's like, oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this could have been made without generative AI?
It would be really hard, because every time you would come up with a new shape and then test it, and then whereas the generative design would give you random mutations of the shape and it scores it for you every time. So it's much faster, much more efficient.
Yeah, the only way to do this then without generative AI back in the day would have been just have a battery of PhD students
Right.
or whatever laboring away at it.
Exactly.
But it's so insanely interesting. Is there any other places you're using AI?
Oh, we use AI for pattern mostly machine learning, I would say, for pattern recognition of the cells. For example, when we grow olfactory epithelium from humans on the O-chip, there are different populations of cells. There are neurons, there are support cells, there are stem cells. And then going under microscope and manually identifying which one is which and counting them is a tedious process. Whereas what our scientist has done is that he has come up with an algorithm which learns the shape and the morphology of the cells. So every time that we have a new culture, it automatically tells us how many neurons we have, how many support cells, how many stem cells we have. So that's another indication of machine learning that we are using in our process.
How interesting. So that really allows your team to be far more lean than it otherwise would have been.
Exactly. Automating things and saving time.
And also, because before this I interviewed Buddha and Frederick, who are working fairly internationally, or at least collaborating across the big pond. Is your team mainly, and your operations also mainly US-based right now?
Yes, we're a US-based company. So our lab is in MBC Biolabs in San Francisco. We have advisors from East Coast. We have one advisor from Germany, but operations and everything is here in the US.
And was it an active decision, or is it just what was easier?
We never thought about doing it outside of the US, because we have all the resources here.
Yes.
And so that was just very natural.
Okay.
But I know, for instance, for Buddha and Frederick, it's working really well, like in Europe and in India.
Yeah, it's also the history of their company.
Exactly.
Created it as such.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, super interesting. That's fairly clear for me. Is there anything you feel like we missed during this conversation?
No, I think this was great, and it was fun chatting about our company with you, and thank you so much.
Yeah, well, best for the company, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.